What does culture mean to me? Well, if I would have been asked that about 8 years ago, I would have responded with, it has something to do with where one is born, the color of one's skin, and maybe the religion one belonged to. I was naive about culture and how to define it. My idea of culture was very narrow, and I wasn't able to comprehend the large capacity of the characteristics that fall under the umbrella of culture. But that all quickly changed because of one class that I decided to take in high school. It's kind of ironic, actually, because I made the decision to take American Sign Language as my foreign language because I was having trouble grasping Spanish. I knew absolutely nothing about American Sign Language. I didn't realize that it was the same type of language that Spanish is to a Hispanic person. I thought that American Sign Language was just another way to communicate English. And I also thought that American Sign Language had absolutely nothing to do with culture. However, American Sign Language and being surrounded by the deaf community has been the most crucial point in my development as a culturally aware individual. I fell in love with the language of the deaf. I found it to be a beautiful language, and I loved expressing myself through my hands, my face, and my body. Even just in high school, although I understood that there was such a thing as deaf culture, I couldn't quite grasp that someone who is deaf has a different culture than someone who is hearing, even if they were both born and raised in America. Fast forward to college. I realized that Xavier University was one of the only colleges in Ohio to accept American Sign Language as a foreign language, and they also offered a Deaf Studies minor. I continued my language studies in American Sign Language and took the required courses to have a minor in Deaf Studies. My reasoning? I don't know. I thought it would be cool. When I decided to enroll as a Deaf Studies minor, I thought I would be learning about the history of the deaf and how to work with the deaf in real-life situations. Again, I was proved very wrong. Through my Deaf Studies minor, I discovered that deaf culture is comprised of so many different facets and norms and values and stereotypes, family dynamics, social situation, and rules. The deaf have a heritage. They have a history. They have a language. They have everything that any other culture has. The most important thing that I took away from my Deaf Studies minor was that many people view deafness as a disability. However, within the deaf community, they don't believe they have a disability. In fact, they firmly believe that their deafness is a unique culture. I was able to relate this to every other individual from a unique culture. There are so many different aspects of culture that not everyone thinks about, and I have become aware of this through my Deaf Studies minor. From learning about all of the different ways culture affects people who are deaf, I was able to generalize my understanding of culture to every other individual that I come in contact with. I've realized as a Deaf Studies minor that culture is not just what meets the eye. Culture is something that flourishes through every inch of every individual in a very unique way. It's both things that you can see and things that are not observable. Culture is also something that many people have stereotypes about. I've also realized through my development that you should never judge someone because of their culture, no matter what form it takes. In high school, I thought being deaf was a disability. Now, I know that being deaf is being part of a community and being part of a culture where there are certain norms and values regarding social situations and family dynamics. I also realize now that culture is not just where you were born, what you look like, or what religion you are. Culture is so much more, and I am confident that because of my Deaf Studies minor, I can go about life and not be as ignorant about culture as I was in high school. I now have a greater appreciation for those from various cultural backgrounds. I also now have the desire to continue learning about culture in every single way, for both hearing people deaf people, for people who don't display their culture on their sleeve, and for people who do display their culture on their sleeve. In high school, I didn't know what culture was. I thought I did, but I was wrong. Now I at least think I know what culture is all about. And I am so grateful for all of my interactions, both within school and within the deaf community, because they have shown me just how unique and precious culture truly is.